Let's play Guess the Historical Event. Okay, what was called the historical event in which two nations, one from the New World and one from the Old, that were on the verge of war during the 20th century? The Cold War between the United States and Soviet Union? Nah, I'm going to give you another hint. One nation is from South America and the other is a nation in Europe with a declining colonial empire. The Falklands War between the UK and Argentina? Okay, you have already seen the title. It's the Lobster War between Brazil and France. Our story begins in 1961 in the region of Amapa, when the Brazilian government discovered some smuggling schemes around the exportation of the manganese mineral that went to the French Guiana and then to Europe. Upon hearing about the scheme, the Brazilian president Jânio Quadros, which had a reputation of being mentally insane, decided that measures should be taken. Then started planning an invasion of the French Guiana, the so-called Cabralzinho operation. Everything was in set for the operation to start until the president resigned, claiming that obscure forces made him leave the office. He was succeeded by his vice president, João Goulart, and the crisis was averted. But that was not the only crisis that the Brazilian and French government were facing. Early that year, the French were tired of fishing lobsters only off the coast of Mauritania in Africa. Then they had the brilliant idea of realizing a research on lobsters off the coast of Brazil. The Brazilians granted the permission to the French realize their research, only to find out that the French ships were actually fishing large amounts of lobsters, and the Brazilian government told them to go away. And they went away, then came back and started fishing lobsters again, until one of their ships was seized by Brazilian authorities. You see, the discussion here is that Brazil argued that the lobster was an economical property found on their continental shelf. Therefore, the lobsters were Brazilian property. The French side, however, contested the Brazilian view, basing their argument on the Geneva Convention of the Law of the Sea of 1958, that allowed international fishing rights on the high seas. During the discussions, one question of international importance appeared. What is a lobster? The French argued that the lobster was a fish because they move around the sea by jumping, and jumping in this case should be considered as swimming. Therefore, the lobsters are in the ocean. The Brazilian Navy commander Paulo de Castro Moreira Silva counter-argued by saying, by analogy, if a lobster is a fish because it moves doing leaps, then a kangaroo is a bird. I know, let the others discuss about ideology and spheres of influence. Brazil and France are having the real talk about matters of international affairs here. Some more French ships had arrived and got seized again, but the president João Goulart released them and finally allowed them the right to fish the lobsters. Of course, the Brazilian people did not like the news, and the president had to step back on the measure, and outlawed again the fishing rights and sent an ultimatum to the French government for the removal of all fishing boats from the Brazilian waters. The French president was enraged by the measure and sent the French destroyer Tart II for the protection of the fishing boats. The South American nation started to mobilize its navy in response. The Brazilian navy, however, was undersupplied and outdated. And by the way, all this was happening during the carnival, so not many personnels could be mobilized. When the ships arrived off the northeastern coast of Brazil, both navies were facing each other. Later, the Tart II would be replaced by a much weaker ship. Some time has passed until the French simply gave up and left the coast, alleging that the fishing boats that were there were losing money during this inaction of almost 1 month. So in 1963, a compromise was settled that allowed the French the fishing rights for about 5 years, with the obligation of them sharing profits with the Brazilian government. I bet that Brazil and France soon became friends forever after. Well, apart from the time when a Brazilian minister said that Macron's wife was ugly, I guess the two nations are friends now. I don't know.